Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her classmates painted their nails and talked about boys, she spent weekends at the shooting range with her grandfather, a Vietnam veteran who taught her that precision was everything. Her steady hands and sharp eyes caught his attention early, but even he couldn't have predicted where those skills would take her. At 18, Sarah walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office with determination burning in her chest. The recruiter, Sergeant Johnson, looked her up and down with obvious doubt. She was barely 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed maybe 120 pounds soaking wet. When she announced her intention to become a Marine sniper, he actually laughed out loud. "Little lady," he said, leaning back in his chair, "maybe you should consider communications or logistics. Sniper school isn't a place for girls to play soldier." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "I want to be tested like everyone else. Give me the same chance you'd give any man walking through that door." The recruiter shrugged and handed her the paperwork. He figured she'd wash out of basic training within weeks, saving everyone the embarrassment later. Basic training at Paris Island was everything Sarah expected and worse. The drill instructors seemed to have a special hatred reserved just for her. They made her carry extra weight during marches, assigned her the worst cleaning duties, and never missed a chance to remind her that she didn't belong there. "Martinez!" Drill instructor Ramirez would shout across the squad bay. "What makes you think you can do a man's job when you can't even reach the top bunk without climbing?" The other recruits watched these exchanges with mixed reactions. Some felt sorry for her. Others thought she was asking for trouble by trying to prove a point. But Sarah never complained, never asked for special treatment, and never quit. She just worked harder. During weapons training, something changed. While other recruits struggled with marksmanship fundamentals, Sarah's targets came back with tight groupings that made instructors do double takes. Her breathing control was perfect, her trigger squeeze smooth and consistent. Even Ramirez had to admit her shooting was exceptional. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that, Martinez?" he asked one afternoon, examining her latest scorecard. "My grandfather, sir. He said shooting is like meditation. Everything else disappears except you, the rifle, and the target." Word of Sarah's marksmanship skills spread through the training battalion. Suddenly, the same instructors who had been trying to break her down were recommending her for advanced training programs. When graduation day arrived, Sarah stood in formation with a perfect score in marksmanship and the grudging respect of her drill instructors. But her real test was just beginning. Getting accepted into Scout Sniper School would require more than good shooting. The physical demands were brutal, the mental pressure intense, and the failure rate astronomical. Most importantly, she would be the first woman ever to attempt the course. The news of her application traveled up the chain of command quickly. Colonel Harrison, the base commander, called her into his office for a personal interview. He was an old-school Marine who had served in Desert Storm and believed deeply in tradition. "Martinez," he said, studying her service record, "you've got impressive scores here. But Scout Sniper School isn't just about shooting. These men will be depending on each other in life or death situations. Unit cohesion is everything." Sarah met his gaze directly. "Sir, I understand the concerns about integration, but I believe performance should be the only standard that matters. If I can meet every requirement the same as everyone else, shouldn't that be enough?" The colonel was quiet for a long moment, weighing his decision. Finally, he nodded slowly. "You'll get your chance, Martinez, but understand this. There will be no special accommodations, no lowered standards, and no second chances if you fall behind." "I wouldn't want it any other way, sir." 3 months later, Sarah reported to Camp Pendleton for the beginning of Scout Sniper School. The other candidates were already there when she arrived, a group of 23 hard-looking Marines who had all volunteered for one of the military's most demanding programs. When she walked into the barracks with her gear bag, the conversation stopped dead. Staff Sergeant Wilson, the chief instructor, looked like he had been chiseled from granite. His face showed no emotion as he addressed the assembled group for the first time. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, then paused and looked directly at Sarah. "Or should I say Marines? You are about to begin the most challenging 13 weeks of your military careers. By the end of this program, most of you will be gone. The Marine Corps doesn't need mediocre snipers. We need the absolute best." He walked slowly around the group, making eye contact with each candidate. "You will learn precision shooting at distances most people can't even see clearly. You will master fieldcraft, camouflage, and stalking techniques that could save your life and the lives of your fellow Marines. Most importantly, you will learn to operate as part of a two-man team where trust is everything." When he stopped in front of Sarah, his voice grew harder. "Some of you might think this course is about proving a point or breaking barriers. Let me be clear. This is about combat effectiveness, period. If you're here for any reason other than becoming the deadliest sniper possible, you need to leave now." Sarah stared back at him without flinching. "I'm here to earn my place, Staff Sergeant. Nothing more, nothing less." The other candidates watched this exchange with fascination. Some seemed to be rooting for her to fail. Others appeared genuinely curious about how she would handle the pressure. But all of them understood that her presence had added an extra layer of tension to an already stressful situation. That first night in the barracks, Sarah could hear whispered conversations from the other bunks. Some Marines worried about how her presence would affect team dynamics. Others questioned whether the standards would be secretly lowered to ensure she succeeded. A few expressed concerns about operating in combat with someone who might not be able to carry her weight. Lance Corporal Jackson, a tough Marine from Detroit, was the most vocal skeptic. "I don't care how well she shoots," he said quietly to his bunkmate. "When bullets start flying and we need to move fast with heavy gear, what happens then? I'm not dying because someone wanted to make a political statement." Sarah pretended to sleep, but every word cut deep. She knew that proving herself would require more than just meeting standards. She would have to exceed them consistently and convincingly. The weight of representing all women in combat roles pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. The next morning brought their first real test, a 15-mile hike with full combat gear. Sarah had trained relentlessly for this moment, building up her endurance and strength through months of preparation. As the group set out in the pre-dawn darkness, she settled into the rhythm that would carry her through the long day ahead. The 15-mile hike became Sarah's first major victory. While 3 Marines fell out due to heat exhaustion and another twisted his ankle on rocky terrain, she maintained her position in the middle of the pack throughout the entire march. When they reached the finish line, her uniform was soaked with sweat, but she was still moving strong. Jackson looked surprised when she jogged past him to help carry the injured Marine's gear, but the physical challenges were only the beginning. Scout Sniper School demanded mastery of complex mathematical calculations for long-range shooting, detailed knowledge of ballistics and weather effects, and the ability to remain motionless for hours while gathering intelligence. Sarah threw herself into every subject with fierce concentration. During their first week of classroom instruction, Gunnery Sergeant Peters taught them about external ballistics, how bullets behave in flight over long distances. Sarah's hand shot up repeatedly with questions about wind drift calculations and barometric pressure effects. Her notebook filled with precise diagrams and formulas, while other students struggled to keep up. "Martinez," Peters called out during one session, "calculate the bullet drop for a .308 Winchester at 800 yards, assuming standard atmospheric conditions and a 168-grain match bullet." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Approximately 156 inches of drop, Gunny. But we'd also need to account for wind speed and direction, temperature variations, and the specific ballistic coefficient of our ammunition lot." Peters nodded approvingly. Several other students looked impressed despite themselves. Jackson, however, rolled his eyes and muttered something about showing off. The real test came during their first live-fire exercise at the 600-yard line. Each student had to achieve a specific level of accuracy to continue in the program. Sarah approached the firing line with her M40A5 rifle, the same weapon used by Marine snipers in combat zones around the world. The weight felt familiar in her hands, like an extension of her own body. Wind flags along the range showed a steady breeze from the left at about 8 miles per hour. Sarah adjusted her scope accordingly and settled into a comfortable prone position. The target, a standard military silhouette, seemed impossibly small at that distance. Her first shot rang out across the range. Through her spotting scope, she could see the bullet hole appear in the target's center mass. The second shot grouped tightly with the first. By her 10th and final round, she had achieved the tightest grouping of the day. All shots within a 6-inch circle. "Outstanding shooting, Martinez," Staff Sergeant Wilson announced to the group. "That's the kind of precision we need to see from everyone." But success on the range was only part of the equation. Sniper training also required mastery of fieldcraft, the art of moving unseen through hostile territory. Students had to learn advanced camouflage techniques, natural concealment methods, and how to construct effective hide sites that could fool enemy observation. Their first stalking exercise took place in the hills surrounding Camp Pendleton. Each student had to move from a starting position to within 200 yards of an observation post manned by instructors with high-powered binoculars. The challenge was covering that ground without being detected, then taking a precision shot at a designated target. Sarah spent the night before studying topographical maps of the training area. She identified potential routes that offered the best concealment and planned her approach carefully. When the exercise began at dawn, she moved slowly and deliberately through the scrub brush and rocky terrain. The key was patience. Other students tried to move too quickly and were spotted by the keen-eyed instructors. Sarah took nearly 4 hours to cover what could have been a 20-minute walk, stopping frequently to observe the observation post and adjust her route. When she finally reached her shooting position, she was completely invisible among the natural vegetation. Her shot rang out precisely at the designated time, striking the target dead center. When the instructors called time, they spent several minutes searching for her position before she finally revealed herself. Even Wilson seemed impressed by her fieldcraft skills. "That's how it's done," he announced to the group. "Martinez just demonstrated perfect stalking technique. The rest of you need to study what she did and learn from it." As the weeks progressed, Sarah continued to excel in every aspect of the training. Her marksmanship scores consistently ranked among the top 3 students. Her physical fitness improved steadily, allowing her to keep pace with larger, stronger Marines during demanding field exercises. Most importantly, she began to earn the respect of her classmates through consistent performance rather than words. The breakthrough moment came during a particularly challenging urban stalking exercise. Students were required to move through a mock city environment and engage targets from concealed positions while avoiding detection by role-playing enemy forces. Sarah was partnered with Rodriguez, a quiet Marine from California, who had initially been skeptical about working with her. Their mission required approaching a multi-story building and engaging targets on different floors while remaining undetected. Sarah suggested they split up to create multiple firing positions, allowing them to cover more angles and provide mutual support. Rodriguez agreed reluctantly, still uncertain about her tactical judgment. Sarah spent the first hour of the exercise moving into position on the second floor of an adjacent building. She had to crawl through a narrow maintenance space filled with pipes and electrical conduits, emerging in a small storage room that offered an excellent view of the target building. Her camouflage made her virtually invisible from across the courtyard. When the time came to engage, her first shot eliminated a target that Rodriguez couldn't see from his position. Her second shot cleared the way for his advance to a better location. Working together through hand signals, they systematically eliminated all designated targets without being detected by the opposing force. That was textbook sniper teamwork, Wilson told them during the after-action review. Martinez, your position selection was perfect, and your communication with Rodriguez kept both of you alive. Rodriguez, good job adapting to your partner's suggestions and trusting her tactical judgment. For the first time since arriving at sniper school, Sarah felt like she truly belonged. Rodriguez shook her hand after the exercise and said quietly, I was wrong about you, Martinez. You know what you're doing out there. But just as Sarah began to feel accepted, a new challenge emerged that would test everything she had learned. The final phase of sniper school included a comprehensive field exercise that would last 72 hours. Students would be divided into two-person teams and given complex missions that required all their skills: marksmanship, fieldcraft, intelligence gathering, and survival in hostile territory. The night before the exercise began, Jackson approached Sarah's bunk. His expression was serious, and she could tell he had something important to say. Martinez, he began quietly, I owe you an apology. I had you figured all wrong when you got here. You've proved yourself a dozen times over, and I respect what you've accomplished. Sarah looked up from cleaning her rifle. Thanks, Jackson. That means a lot coming from you. He nodded and started to turn away, then paused. There's something else you should know. Word is that some people higher up the chain of command are watching this final exercise very closely. Your performance here could affect whether other women get the same opportunity in the future. Sarah felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. No pressure, right? Jackson managed a small smile. You can handle it. We all know you can. The final exercise would take place in the mountains of Southern California, an environment that closely simulated the terrain where Marine snipers operated in Afghanistan and other combat zones. Teams would be inserted by helicopter and given 48 hours to complete their assigned missions before extraction. Sarah was paired with Miller, a soft-spoken Marine from Georgia who had proven himself one of the best students in the class. Their mission briefing revealed a complex scenario involving multiple targets spread across several miles of mountainous terrain. They would need to gather intelligence, conduct precision engagements, and provide overwatch for a simulated friendly unit movement. As their helicopter lifted off in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah checked her equipment one final time. Her rifle was zeroed perfectly, her camouflage was properly applied, and her fieldcraft skills had been honed through months of intensive training. Everything she had worked for came down to the next 3 days in those mountains. The helicopter dropped them at a landing zone 5 miles from their first objective. As soon as their boots hit the ground, Sarah and Miller melted into the landscape and began their approach. They had 72 hours to prove they belonged among the deadliest marksmen in the world. The mountains were unforgiving. Sarah and Miller moved through terrain that seemed designed to break both body and spirit. Jagged rocks tore at their uniforms, while thorny vegetation caught their equipment at every turn. The altitude made breathing difficult, and the temperature dropped dramatically as night fell. But they pressed forward, driven by months of training and an unshakable determination to succeed. Their first target was an observation post positioned on a ridge overlooking a valley that served as a key transportation route. According to their intelligence briefing, enemy forces used this position to coordinate attacks on friendly convoys. Sarah and Miller's job was to eliminate the threat without revealing their own position. It took them 8 hours to cover the 3 miles to their shooting position. They moved like ghosts through the darkness, stopping frequently to listen and observe. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. When they finally reached the ridge opposite their target, both Marines were exhausted but focused. Sarah began constructing their hide site while Miller established communications with their command post. Using natural materials and their ghillie suits, they created a position that was invisible from more than 50 yards away. The site offered an excellent view of the target area while providing multiple escape routes if they were discovered. Through her high-powered scope, Sarah could observe the enemy position clearly. Two role-playing opposing forces were stationed in a sandbagged bunker, taking turns scanning the valley with binoculars. The range was 650 yards, challenging, but well within her capabilities. "I have a clear shot on target 1, she whispered to Miller, who was serving as her spotter. Miller studied the target through his spotting scope, calculating wind speed and direction. "Wind is variable, shifting between 5 and 8 miles per hour from the northwest. Target is stationary. Send it when ready." Sarah controlled her breathing, waiting for the perfect moment between heartbeats. The rifle's trigger broke cleanly, and she watched through her scope as the simulated enemy soldier was marked as eliminated by exercise controllers. Her shot had been perfect, but eliminating one target was only the beginning. Their mission required them to remain in position for another 18 hours, gathering intelligence on enemy movement patterns while avoiding detection. This meant staying motionless in their cramped hide site, taking turns observing and resting while maintaining constant vigilance. Hour after hour, Sarah recorded details about enemy patrols, vehicle movements, and communication patterns. Her logbook filled with precise observations that would be invaluable to friendly forces operating in the area. Miller marveled at her patience and attention to detail, qualities that separated good snipers from great ones. Their second major challenge came during the mission's second day. Intelligence reports indicated that a high-value target would be meeting with local commanders at a compound deep in the valley. Sarah and Miller had to reposition closer to the target area and prepare for a much more difficult shot. The new position required crossing nearly 2 miles of open ground during daylight hours. Moving unseen across such terrain demanded every fieldcraft skill they had learned. Sarah led the way, using micro-terrain features and natural concealment to remain invisible to enemy observers. They moved in short bounds, covering perhaps 50 yards at a time before stopping to observe and plan their next move. The sun was merciless, and their heavy equipment made every step an effort. But slowly, methodically, they closed the distance to their new shooting position. When they finally reached the edge of the compound, Sarah was shocked by what she saw through her scope. The targets were positioned behind thick concrete barriers at a range of nearly 900 yards. This would be the longest shot of her military career, requiring precise calculations and perfect execution. Miller worked frantically with his rangefinder and ballistics computer, calculating the complex trajectory needed for such an extreme distance shot. "Range is 847 yards, he whispered. "Temperature is 95 degrees, humidity about 40%, wind is 8 miles per hour, shifting between east and southeast." Sarah made minute adjustments to her scope's elevation and windage knobs. At this distance, every variable mattered. A slight miscalculation would mean missing the target entirely, potentially compromising their position and endangering the overall mission. The target appeared briefly between two concrete barriers, offering only a narrow window of opportunity. Sarah had perhaps 3 seconds to take her shot before he disappeared again. She settled her crosshairs on the target's center mass and began her breathing sequence. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and she watched through her scope as the bullet traced its long arc through the desert air. For what seemed like an eternity, she couldn't tell if the shot had connected. Then the exercise controller's radio crackled with confirmation. Direct hit. Miller grabbed her shoulder and grinned widely. "Outstanding shot, Martinez! That was incredible marksmanship!" But their celebration was short-lived. Enemy forces had heard the rifle shot and were beginning to search for the sniper position. Sarah and Miller had to execute an immediate escape and evasion plan, moving quickly away from their position before opposing forces could locate them. They spent the next 8 hours playing a deadly game of cat and mouse with enemy patrols. Using every concealment technique they had learned, they moved through terrain that offered little cover while avoiding detection by increasingly aggressive search teams. Sarah's small size actually became an advantage. allowing her to hide in spaces that would have exposed larger Marines. When they finally reached their extraction point, both Marines were physically and mentally exhausted. They had been operating at maximum intensity for nearly 72 hours with minimal food and sleep, but they had completed every aspect of their mission successfully, demonstrating the skills and teamwork that defined elite snipers. The helicopter ride back to base camp was quiet. Sarah stared out the window at the mountains that had tested her so thoroughly, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment mixed with relief. She had proven herself capable of operating at the highest level of military precision, but more importantly, she had earned the complete trust and respect of her partner. Back at Camp Pendleton, the final week of sniper school focused on mission debriefings and comprehensive testing of everything students had learned. Sarah's performance during the field exercise had been flawless, but she still had to pass written examinations covering ballistics, tactics, and intelligence procedures. The night before graduation, Staff Sergeant Wilson called her into his office for a private conversation. His usual stern expression had softened slightly, and she could see something resembling pride in his eyes. "Martinez," he began, "in 20 years of running this program, I've seen a lot of good Marines come through that door. Some were natural shooters, others were gifted tacticians, and a few had exceptional physical capabilities. But very rarely do I see someone who excels in every aspect of sniper operations." Sarah waited quietly, unsure what to expect from this unexpected praise. Wilson continued, "Your marksmanship scores are in the top 5% of all graduates we've ever produced. Your fieldcraft skills are exceptional and your tactical judgment is sound. Most importantly, you've demonstrated the mental toughness and reliability that we demand from our snipers." He paused and pulled out a folder from his desk drawer. "I'm recommending you for immediate assignment to a Marine Special Operations unit. They've specifically requested our best graduate for an upcoming deployment, and based on your performance here, that's you." Sarah felt her heart race with excitement and nervousness. Assignment to Special Operations meant joining the absolute elite of Marine snipers, working on missions that required the highest levels of skill and secrecy. "There's one more thing," Wilson added, his voice becoming more serious. "Your success here has opened doors for other women who want to follow in your footsteps. The Marine Corps is paying close attention to how this integration process works. Your continued performance will influence whether this opportunity remains available." The weight of that responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders once again. She had succeeded in proving that she belonged among the Marine Corps' elite snipers, but her journey was far from over. Graduation day arrived with typical military ceremony. Sarah stood in formation wearing the same utilities she had worn for 13 weeks of the most challenging training in the military. But now those uniforms carried new meaning. They marked her as one of the few, the proud, the deadly accurate. When her name was called and she stepped forward to receive her Scout Sniper qualification, the applause from her classmates was genuine and enthusiastic. Jackson and Rodriguez cheered loudest of all, having seen firsthand what she had accomplished through dedication and skill. After the ceremony, several of her fellow graduates approached her with congratulations and expressions of respect. The same Marines who had doubted her ability to complete the course now spoke about her performance with admiration. "You earned every bit of this," Miller told her as they packed their gear for departure. "I was honored to be your partner during that final exercise. You're going to do great things with Special Operations." As Sarah prepared to leave Camp Pendleton for her new assignment, she reflected on everything that had brought her to this moment. The doubts of recruiters and drill instructors seemed like ancient history now. The whispered conversations about whether she belonged felt like echoes from another lifetime. She had not only survived Scout Sniper School, but graduated at the top of her class. More importantly, she had done so without asking for special treatment or accepting lowered standards. Her success had been earned through the same demanding criteria applied to every Marine who wore the sniper's badge. Standing outside the sniper school barracks for the last time, Sarah looked back at the building that had transformed her from a motivated recruit into one of the deadliest marksmen in the world. The etched mission count on her rifle stock remained empty, but she knew that would change soon enough. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, confident in her abilities and secure in the knowledge that she truly belonged among the elite warriors of the United States Marine Corps. The small-town girl from Texas had become something extraordinary, not because she was trying to prove a point or break barriers, but because she had pursued excellence with unwavering determination. Her story would inspire others to follow the same path. But for now, she was focused on the mission ahead and the opportunity to serve her country at the highest level of military capability.